Make 2020 fantastic. Come to AireCon, 13th to the 15th of March, and you can meet some fantastic people, play some fantastic games. Just everything is going to be fantastic. You can get your tickets now by going to airecon.co.uk/tickets or by following the links in the show notes. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for January, because it's the beginning of the year, isn't it? Well, it's almost halfway through the beginning month of the year. That might be confusing to some, might not be confusing to others, might be a little bit of a conundrum. You might even say it might be a little bit of a riddle. There's only one thing to do when you want to work yourself out a riddle, is you go and get somebody who knows all about being a riddle. So I've got Corwin Riddle. Corwin Riddle, they're in charge of Strange Space Games, and they are here to talk about a little bit about Arcane Alley and its expansion that is going to be coming up very, very soon. Might be as soon as you're listening to it. You might be a little bit starstruck. You might even be possibly a little bit moonstruck. Here he is. It's Corwin. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Rick?
I'm alright, I think. Yeah, I'm good. I can't complain. It's been a decent start to the year. And long may it continue. I've got to ask, you're in the other side of the world in Texas. Is it as cold here as it is there? Are you not even having to worry about a jacket or anything like that? Is it like a blistering 100 degrees or something stupid?
I have the windows open. It's about 75 and nice and sunny, and pretty much the reason I live here.
I pretty much have almost got my jacket on, and the heating is about as far as up as it can get, because it's one of those colds where you're so cold that you can't get hot, even if you decided to kind of set yourself. I could be recording this in a warm bath and I'd still be feeling quite cold, so we're just gonna kind of power through. But you're here to talk about your expansion for Arcane Alley, because that funded last year, because the first time, and this is where we do the kind of the shameful bit, is that we kind of started talking a long time ago, and I'm so ashamed I'm not even going to talk about it, but that was when you were first bringing Arcane Alley to the forefront, to Kickstarter, and it went ahead and it got funded, and now you're coming back with Moonstruck Market. But you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, because we can talk about board games all day, and board games are okay. But
yeah, they're fine.
How they're alright. It's a living. It's a thing. How long have you been involved in kind of designing them? I mean, have you always, take me back a bit. I mean, when did you start kind of putting pen to paper?
So I guess officially, when we were kids, we used to kind of make up our own games, and we'd play. It was back when like Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo just came out, and we would make our own Sonic levels. Like, just get sheets of paper and line them up and make these really long side-scrolling levels for a game that didn't exist, and then
really,
yeah. And use we get all those little stencils and everything to make sure the loop-de-loops were perfectly circle and stuff like that. And I guess that's
did you give them names? Did you have names for the levels? Can you remember what they were called?
No.
Yes,
I think the only rule we had was they had to be alliterative. I think almost all of them, be like Crooked Canyon or or something like that. It had to sound like it would fit in the game. I guess we were pitching it to them, even though no one ever knew about them.
I get a feel like this is coming from a place that you actually remember every single level and every single one that you created, but you're refusing to tell me in case I judge you. And it's fine. There's no judgment here. You are in a safe, you're in a non-judgmental zone. I promise I won't laugh. But did you end up just like taking the Green Hill Zone and then just changing it slightly, or the casino place and things like that? Or did you kind of like fully have completely your own ideas? Was there a snow level? Was there one that's got candy in it and stuff like that? Is that the type of thing that you did?
I feel like, yeah. I mean, you know how like most games that had levels, they'd be like, oh, okay, here's the basic mechanic, and now we're just going to skin it with like 10 different things. We would kind of do that, so we would copy the Green Hills level, but we'd be like, yeah, but this one's lava, totally different. And, then have an ice one and stuff like that. Yeah, we would do that for like a lot of games. Mostly, like, I guess video games is most of what we did when growing up. Because as kids, we had Dungeons and Dragons and Hero Quest and Rift and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was like a 1970s version of Trivial Pursuit that's still talking about the Soviet Union,
Exactly.
And not really interesting to like a 10-year-old.
You're kind of going into class the next day and the teacher's kind of covering history. And you're just like, reading out all these different things, and it's like, and you're just getting question after question wrong, and it's like, I thought Trivial Pursuit, you lied to me. You end up in detention because everybody, they're still talking about like the good old days of communism and stuff like that, and you're just like getting questions. You're just, it's wrecking your life for you, kind of things. You mentioned kind of like your siblings. So was there quite a few of you in the family, or was it just like a brother or sister?
I have two brothers.
All right, okay.
Yeah, one's a year older, the other's 4 years younger, and we all kind of played video games and stuff. Like we would band together this alliance to get every new system, and I feel like it was the only thing that made us get along. Because if we misbehaved, we're losing the N64 for the weekend, and we could be wrestling and bloody nosed. And if the parents came in, oh, we're not fighting, we're totally fine.
Did you have like a signal? It's like, quick. Mama bird is in the nest. Mama bird is in the nest. Stop punching your brother. Kind of thing. You're obviously a middle child then, so you were kind of like right in the middle. So it would always been your fault every single time, because either you were fighting your big brother or you're fighting your younger brother. Stop hitting your younger brother. But Mom, he just called me the most ridiculous name. What did he call you? He called me Go to your room. I don't want to hear that language coming out your mouth, young man. So you're kind of continually kind of stuck in the kind of the middle. Did you obviously you mentioned the kind of the creative stuff as well. Were you quite arty? Do you continue? Are you quite artistic, or are you quite graphical? Because there's a difference obviously between the two. Are you quite a visual person then?
Yeah, definitely visual. I went to art school for 2 years. And I was kind of doing like a double thing. I was doing art school and then also like English and creative writing. And I was trying to do illustration. I wanted to do industrial design, where like you're making those cool like grayscale like isometric drawings of like cars and airplanes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that, but you had to do all the basic stuff first, and we had to write papers as well for some of like the art history classes. And I had a professor that was so I went to Michigan, so it wasn't just an art school. Like they had an art school, but also they had like the literature, science, and arts, and all the other programs and stuff. Yeah. But I had a professor who was professor of the standard drawing illustration class that I was taking, like my second semester, and also he was one of the art history professors. And I turned in my first paper, and he approached me. He was like, you should drop out and do English if you can write this well, because your art's okay, but he's like, but I think that your writing is pretty good, and you probably have a better chance doing that.
How did he start that conversation? He say, Corwin, you ever been let down gently?
Corwin, have you ever had your dreams crushed by someone, let's just say, for example, me?
Corwin, are you the type of person who's just going to openly weep when they're given bad news?
Oh, I can see you tearing. Oh, so that's a yes. Yeah, no, it was the best advice I think I ever got. Because I did kind of, I didn't drop out. I just like kind of transferred to the literature department. And
did a sideways shuffle. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm moving departments, I'm dancing my way over there.
But it was nice, and yeah, I enjoyed it, and I ended up like I had I graduated just an English creative writing degree, but I've done like graphic design and stuff since. Yeah.
Oh right.
And like I do all the terrible sketches for like for the artist who like makes the beautiful illustrations. I'll make some like, because I know general what like kind of colors and shapes and composition I want. So
yeah.
I'll just scribble down this horrid looking thing that kind of has the right color palette and say do this, but not poorly.
But have you always then continued to dabble in the art side of things? I take it as time goes on, you're still kind of like, I'm just doodling away. If something's bored and I've got like a pen, I can just like muck about and stuff like that.
Yeah, not really. I guess I never put in the time necessary to become good enough at actual illustration. So I can do concepts and some perspective and stuff. Yeah. But I guess graphic design I can do more. I can make logos and design like a T-shirt or like frame and stuff like that. Like I made like the logo for the Strange Space games, and like most of the stuff that's in the game. If it's not like an actual illustration, I probably made it in Photoshop. So
yeah, because actual illustration is ridiculously difficult to do, as in to do the proper stuff. Because I've got a friend, Jesse, and they do amazing work. You can see them in Filthy Wizard if you go and search on Twitter, and they do commissions as well. As a quick plug, but shout out a friend when you can. But they're kind of like, you'll see their latest work, and you're just like that. I can't even do perfect faces. You get something that's like, if that was animated, then that would be just amazing. And the artwork is just absolutely fantastic. And then I'm like, I could try and copy that, because I have done art, and I'm just like, no, that's just rubbish. I'm gonna burn every single kind of art supply that I've ever kind of seen. And I can do the graphic stuff, but I'm not kind of practiced enough. So did you take a step away from board games? Were you still kind of doing a little bit of like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that while you were doing the creative, the more creative English stuff? Because I would have thought that in some ways, depending the direction you take with kind of like the English kind of major, that you would have ended up kind of potentially kind of staying with that, kind of keeping your finger in the kind of the fantasy D&D kind of pie kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I hadn't actually, like, I used to play growing up, and mostly like video games took over for like most of college, and then after that I moved down here to Austin, and have like some friends who like D&D and stuff like that, and I think that's when I really kind of got into it and started like DMing and running my own games and writing stuff. And I think I probably did more then than ever before with like the art stuff. I wrote a lot of adventure. I have a website, I'm gonna make sure it's still up, where I used to post my D&D adventures like in PDF form.
Okay. You have to tell us this now, because I'm not having you forgetting this. What's it called?
Okay, it's called readyinaction.com. Like the...
Ready in action or readyinaction.com.
Yeah, I guess it's all like 10 years old now. I'm looking at it now. But yeah, I sent stuff into Wizards of the Coast. They let you send in like adventures and stuff that they'll publish, and they I think they bought a few and they published I think 2 like little adventures.
That's pretty
about,
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It was like in their online thing.
That is kind of cool.
These dark dwarves in some refinery in the middle of some messed up, like, forsaken valley or something, and then you gotta go in and steal a hammer or something. I forget everything, but the hammer was central to the plot. I remember that much.
I don't remember anything at all, but I do remember that hammer. That hammer was everything. Did it have a name? It was called Longnear. It wasn't copied from anywhere at all. It had an inscription as whoever has the strength not to drop it on the foot shall gain the power of gardening. There you go. Have a green thumb, kind of everywhere. But how did you then move on? I mean, I take it, you are you worried? Did you move down to Austin to get a job? Then is that, or did you move? Were you leaving someplace as opposed to going someplace? I guess is that.
Oh no, I had a couple friends who had moved here before I graduated college, and so I had visited a couple times, and so I had planned to move here, and our, like bright-eyed young 20s dream was we were going to start a video game company together, and you were going to handle this and I was going to do this, and then we were just going to make all these games that we thought were amazing, and that didn't really pan out. But we all stuck around, and just because like the weather and culture, and for me almost entirely the weather.
It's just like, it's either that or I go back to Michigan. What's it like in Michigan? It's a little bit colder. I can make it work here.
Oh.
I can make it work here.
Yeah.
But then,
I didn't.
But what kind of video games were you thinking of making? I mean, you said you played a lot of video games. You mentioned the Super Nintendo. You mentioned the Genesis or the Mega Drive, as we call it. So did you stay with like that lane and then going into the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, all the way up, Xbox kind of thing? Is that what you were kind of doing? Is that what led you to say, well, I want to design video games for a living?
Yeah, so we did like all those games, and we did follow that path, up to like GameCube and all this stuff. And then I think that's what when we actually like started, I think like GameCube was still like kind of like the top of the line thing. But no, we wanted to do, I mean, now you just call them indie games. Back then, there weren't really many people doing them. So, I mean, you just call them whatever. But yeah, like a top-down, like pixel art, RPG, and like a world we created, like almost like Secret of Mana kind of style. But we would design all the parts that you should do last first, because that's the fun stuff. Like we have the story down, the backstory for every character, and like names for the castle that they'd be going to, and exactly how many rooms, and like what art would be hanging there. And then we were like, well, should we make an infrastructure for coding this? And be like, that's not important, we'll do that later.
This is like, what are we going to do? Well, we could just send out everybody 1,500 pictures in a box. Is that not known as a book? I guess. And we could send them a Learn to Code book at the same time, so if they really like what they've read and they've loved our illustrations and everything, then we can teach them how to kind of program at the same time. And to be perfectly honest, I've spoken to quite a few kind of video game designers who have ended up in the board game space because they've got an amazing vision, and it's just getting a pixel to move 3 spaces from the left to the right and then recognise what it should do with another pixel should do it. it's so much easier if you're just dealing with like a deck of cards and some dice and some, and some counters instead. So I've seen a lot of people who've said, well, a lot of the time, originally the game that I was going to make, I was thinking about a huge grand vision that was going to appear on a PC. And and I mean, in those days, I mean, PC indie gaming, I mean, it's only really kind of really taken off again in the last kind of 7 or 8 years. I mean, when I was a lad, I mean, let's face it, when I was a lad, Kennedy was still alive. But you were shut down. I mean, there was only the consoles, and in order to be able to program to the consoles, there was only 3 or 4 kind of big companies that actually did any of the games. The Nintendo naturally never did an awful lot of third-party publishers. Sega did a little bit more, but nothing huge until even the PlayStation 1 came along, and even then, it took a while for them to bring in all the kind of the indie ones. So I kind of know where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you wanted to do anything, it was really more like, I mean, I think Steam came out, but Steam just carried, their games. They weren't such a shop of indie games. So like, if you wanted to make a game, you were making it in like Flash or something, and then hosting it on a website, and it was like something you'd play there, or it was something they'd download, and they'd have to have the program to run it. You weren't jumping into any existing like consoles or anything.
I know, because it was so kind of difficult to do, basically. I mean, there was like a huge wall. As I say, it's not like now. I mean, nowadays you actually get kind of toolkits. I mean, you're talking about kind of creating kind of like when you were creating like the next Secret of Mana, but there's an RPG toolkit that you can actually buy where you can go ahead and you can design pretty much everything that you want to do within reason and kind of get it set up and kind of getting it working out there. So the tool, it's more a case, there's like more of the tool sets are out there, toolkits are out there for people to make their own stuff, and then getting it on Steam is kind of like, I mean, to be perfectly honest, Corwin, it's kind of like just like sticking a podcast out there and seeing who picks it up. To be perfectly, it's like there's two sides of the divide here,
Right, I feel like it is so easy now. You can just get Unity and you can just download like RPG Pack, and it's like, here's your art, and then it's like, we already programmed in all the collision. Here are the layers for where things appear. It's almost like too easy, right? So it's like this point where to succeed, it needs to be easy enough that someone breaking into it can still make a game and get it out there, but it can't be easy enough where everybody can do it, because then it's just flooded and the market's so saturated that no one's even going to see your game, because it's so easy for anyone to put one out. And I mean, it's kind of like that with board games now. Kickstarter lets anybody release one, and there are so many all the time. And I mean, it's hard to like stand out. But do you want it to be the other way where it's impossible for someone to do it? No, you want more games, but it does, it does saturate the market. So
I think, and I've been there with Kickstarters, I think it needs a Steam. It almost needs like a Steam platform. Do you know what I mean? Because I see a lot of people kind of. I mean, last week there was like how many huge big Kickstarters were kind of going on. We had like Return to Dark Tower came out, and then there was Oath by Later Games came out, and then it's like, heaven, kind of like heaven forbid if you'd launched in the same couple of days as those guys, because you were just getting, just like going, oh, okay, thanks, I hate it, kind of thing. But I guess, I mean, even Monolith released a new campaign to go with their Batman Chronicles and their Conan stuff, and then they kind of did the Seinfeld at the cinema. Okay, I'm out. kind of thing. Okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll see you kind of. But I think that was because if you looked at the campaign, it was it was like it was like somebody had explained kind of Kickstarter to like one of those AI programming robots.
And then it wrote erotic fan fiction of
exactly. It kind of went, okay, Richard's right. I don't know. I think it was. I ended
you see
up
Conan from across the room.
You see his glistening muscles. He's obviously been killing bad guys because he's covered in blood, but he's got glistening sweat across his brow, and he smells fantastic. Batman loosens his cowl slightly as he can't believe the vision is in front of him, and he decides to walk gingerly towards Conan, realizing that the angry barbarian might just pick up his sword and cleave what he thinks is a demon in two. And it kind of goes on, and we can continue that, and that could be the rest of the podcast. You know what? Tune in next week. There's a market
for this, actually.
Kind of Kickstarter erotic fan fiction.
Yeah, it's like one of those, Marvel versus Capcom games.
It is,
they make out.
Except it's full on kink kind of thing. It could be just about zombie side. It's there's a whole range of stuff. You could Dinosaur Island. But they're all just eating face instead of each other. I mean, it just. But let's move away. But I saw that and I kind of, as I say, it was like, remember when they had that Google thing where you could put a photograph into stuff and it would prop out this thing that looked like it was all made of eyes? I was like, that was kind of like the Monolith Kickstarter king, because I looked at it and I went, right, so this is like trying to make like a cake and you're only allowed eggs. It was like, I was just reading. I don't know if you got a chance to read it. It was absolutely fantastic, and I don't mean to take the piss out of them, but at the same time I do, because goodness sake, get somebody to read your Kickstarter before you kind of put it out there, because they had like. Did you read it at all?
Yeah, I did go through it. It was weird because for a couple of reasons. Like, the one was it was hard to follow. And it was like, what are you pledging for? They're offering a rule set.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what the title seems to imply. But then everything is like these add-on packs for miniatures. And I was like, are they trying to sell miniatures? Or are they trying to sell a new game? Or are they, what most of the Conan fans in the comments thought, are you trying to resell us the game we just bought?
I saw that as well. I didn't. I kind of read it. The thing was, is the stuff that told you was like an animated GIF. So I started reading it. I was like, okay, so oh, it's all disappeared, and then it came back up again. And I'm like, I'm the type of person, if I sometimes need to use a finger to read stuff, so I need, I need to point and go, oh no, he's put complicated words in there, and then and then it's all just disappeared. And it was like the challenge of the Kickstarter was you got the full reward if you were able to read the campaign. So I think they got to a certain amount. He goes, oh, we're not going to reach our goal, and it's like, oh, you think. But that was it was strange to see. It was strange to see a company that had done so big with like their previous Kickstarter on Batman to kind of make that mistake. And I guess there's a couple of folk going, that gives us hope, because if that gives us hope, kind of going forward. What got you into? Because let's move away from me openly slagging off a publisher for its Kickstarter presence and say, okay, we can quite firmly score them off the list of ever getting any of them on the show. So that's
cut this part out. We'll stop and we'll just cut in like another 5 minutes of like Conan, like prowling through the Batcave And
prowling through the Batcave, holding a note. Batman looked up from his chair, "Are you here?" And he says, and Conan looks up and says, "You sent me a note to break up with me? You sent me a note?" I gave you my sword. I know. And we could cut this in. It's just going a funny, how did he find the Batcave? We don't know. But anyway, so what made you just try to go back to being kind of as I say, you were like, "Oh, you better kind of step in and control me in case it all goes to the pot." Well, this is what happens. The wheels are off the cart. We're going down the hill. We have no idea if we're going to hit the river or we're going to jump over the river and crash into the trees. There's going to be a crash. We know there is, but we just have to figure out when and the wheres. What I'm saying is, what made you pick up a pen, paper, card and say, "I'm going to give this a shot. I think I could make something myself"?
I think we had been... So the D&D campaign we play, I changed... We would be playing and something would happen and we'd say, "Well, I mean, this rule doesn't really seem to make sense a lot." Like, it would be like, when you die, and we were playing 4th edition, but when you die in D&D or your guy goes down to 0 hit points, they're like, "Okay, well, here, just roll this die and see if you die or not."
Mm-hmm.
This is, it's just you get 3 bad rolls and your guy's gone forever.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, let's make a different system. So we made like a negative hit point pool, and if you reach the max of that, then you're dead for good, but otherwise you're just taking injuries and they don't heal very quickly. So if let's say you get down to 0, blah blah blah, and you get hit, you go down to negative 10 or 15, you get healed, you heal from 0, but the next time you go below 0, you start at negative 15, and you just keep going. So if you do eventually reach it, then you die, but it always felt like if you were gonna die, you either kind of knew it was coming, or maybe you did something to deserve it. And it was just getting rid of those feel bad moments where you're like, this is unjust. I don't deserve this death.
Exactly. And those owlbears deserved everything that happened to them. God damn it! Now where's my spoon? I'm going back in for seconds, kind of thing.
But yeah, we would change like a rule like that, or we would we added in like a way to modify gear with like gems to like increase their stuff, because it was just weird that you'd be like, "This sword is my family's heirloom. For generations I have carried this. Oh, look, a +1," and you just throw it in the trash, And so it's like a way to keep your items that you felt like defined your character and stuff.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about the 4th edition D&D game is that it was almost like it would transform into like a board game when you started combat. It was grid based, and it had very specific like distances and like ranges and like area of effects for your moves. And so it's almost like Final Fantasy Tactics, or like one of those RPG isometric games where like you're shoving someone in your whatever, you're in a cutscene, but then the second they're like, "Well, I hit back," and like, "Okay." And it's like combat has begun, and now it like zooms in on like the board.
I could just imagine while you're playing, like you start in the background saying, "Okay, play the tape," and you start playing the Final Fantasy VII kind of battle music in the background.
We did have battle music. I think it was just like a general Spotify list, but yeah, we would.
Did you have... I always found that I got the best results in my D&D campaigns where I had an active violinist at the table. And they're just like... Because it just adds an entire dynamic, especially if the violinist kind of doesn't know exactly what's going on, and they can say, "Should we open the door?" "I don't know. Should you open the door?" "No." And then, you could actually get people to roll their dice faster and make mistakes. So you just go like, that kind of thing. I don't know. I think that's something that has to happen. definitely. If anyone's thinking of D&Ding, get yourself a violinist, I think, or even that. If it's quite a sad kind of campaign, you could have an accordion player.
Oh yeah, for every death, bring in the maybe bagpipes.
Bagpipes. Because all you'd have just 15 renditions of Amazing Grace kind of going on all the time, or a trombone. It's like, because all the DM would do is go, you fall over, and that would be, and then what happens? You fall into, oh, you've sprung the trap. What is it? It's slidey floor, and that's why I never DM, because I can never find a violinist. We can imagine trying to explain it. Would you come along to our D&D group, and stand around and just provide incidental music? Because I think that would be brilliant.
We're playing the orchestra hall as usual.
Exactly. You're willing to give us union rates? I'll consider it. I'll think about it. What about Arcane Alley? I mean, where did that come from?
That came from... So just kind of doing, like, when you play D&D, we'd, like, design little mini-games and stuff like that. At some point, I think we were playing some other board games, like Pandemic and stuff, and we were like, you know what? We really don't like this rule. And so we would change some rule, then we'd change another rule, and we get to the point where we're like, I feel like we're not playing the game. We're playing a different game now. And so I was like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll try doing something like that. And Arcane Alley is there's this game called 9-Card Golf that one of my good friends showed us, and we didn't even know what it was called for the longest time. We just called it nines, because you have 9 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And we would play this, and this was our just like, let's just hang out and talk kind of thing, because you just get to do one thing on your turn. It's mostly about luck. Like, I mean, you can kind of choose where you place a card, but if you get crappy ones, you lose. You know, it's not like...
It's no life and death.
It's not like skill is really coming through that much, but it's just enough of like engagement to make you feel like you're playing a game while still hanging out. And we were playing it, and I was just like, you know what? I think this could actually be a pretty in-depth game if we changed it in some ways. And it was almost like sacrilege, like, we're not changing nines, dude. And so I was like, I'll make my own nines. A better
it's
nines.
Either us or nines. I'll make 10s. Get it up, yeah. I'll make 9 plus 1s. It'll make your 9s look like 9 minus 1s. You'll be playing 8s from now on when I've finished. Yeah. And then you just turned around with a flourish. Made sure you had big hair at the time so you could sweep it away and walk out the door. You'll all be sorry. You'll all be sorry when I bring back my 10s. And off he went.
Cloak swoosh. Yeah.
Slam door. Oh, hi, Batman. How you doing? Oh, you look sad.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. So, and then I needed, like, one of the things was like, well, you need something like different effects when you play the cards and do stuff with the cards, and different way of keeping score, more interesting, like, end game, a way to keep the game a little shorter, give you a little more control. And then I was like, well, I need to theme it. And it's like, well, I had been thinking about, like, just some kind of, like, black market game, but it just felt so generic. Like, people, like, you know, just, like, hiding, like, I didn't want it to be, like, something that had, like, guns and stuff in it that was, like, too violent or like, weird for, like, you know, you to play with, like, kids or something like that. And so, I was like, well, magic explains everything. Anything weird that's going on in any game, you can just say it's magic is the reason this happened. So, kind of just skinned it with, like, some little mini story campaign thing from, like, one of the Dungeons and Dragons games about, like, a wizard town and wizard black market, and seems to do okay. So, were
you tempted? I mean, always when it's tempted to kind of create something, you end up adding in kind of lots of different features. Were you quite disciplined when you put it together then? Were you like, no, this is what we're going to do? I'm going to add as little as possible to this and then just see how we kind of get on? Or did you go through the process and say, actually, probably going to have to strip back a little bit here just to make it kind of all work?
Put in way too much. I think this was like the third game I designed. But it's the first one I decided to take to completion because the first one was so large, and I had already it was very large and very complicated, and I was making mistakes at every single level. Like every time I had to redesign it, I would have to print off a bunch of stuff. It was a huge ordeal. I had to cut stuff off, have to make all these decks. Components were changing. I wanted stuff like dials. It was going to be a heavy box, even if I made prototypes. And I was just like, I can't even imagine the mistakes I'm going to make later on that are going to cost me a lot of money, like in shipping and manufacturing. So this was the smallest game and the simplest. It just had cards and like wooden tokens, and it was a small box, so I knew it would be cheap and cheap to ship. So that's why I pursued it. But I had already learned a lot of lessons for the other games of like not putting in quite too much and then kind of adding them if you need to later. Because if you start off with too many things and something doesn't work, you're like, all right, well, I mean, which of these 50 mechanics is messing it up? Like, is it them interacting with each other? Is it one thing in particular? And so I started with less, and at first it was like, okay, well, this is super boring and not fun. And then added in some more stuff, and it's like, okay, this is more interesting, but I wish you could do this. Well, in order to do that, you'd have to change this, and was kind of going through that. The stripping out features really came from the card effects themselves, to really kind of isolate like the window of when something could happen. Kind of like Magic the Gathering. Like we don't have like a last in, first out like stack, so you know exactly how everything processes.
Yeah.
So we tried to eliminate anything that would like interrupt someone else's action, because then do they finish it? Do they do their effect first? Do you do your effect? And it was just all of these crazy edge cases. And so we really kind of simplified it to the point where like our kind of like more casual game friendly like pals could pick it up, read the instructions, and wouldn't be immediately confused by something. Like something might come up, but it at least seemed playable, like in the to someone who was kind of new to it.
And even if there's somebody old to it, a confusing rule is a pain in the ass. There's nothing that's going to put me off playing a game if I am not sure of a rule myself, and then I have to explain it to somebody else, and then you end up, I think everybody's been there, you end up with that kind of like confusion 2 minutes where and you end up reading the same sentence like 5 times. So it says, if it's 2, then you discard. If it's 2, then you discard. And you read it like, and then everybody's looking at it as, well, what does it mean then? And there's nothing worse than having that rule, because then people are then, well, we don't know if we played it properly, which means we don't know if the person who won was meant to win or the people who lost were meant to lose, or if we got the right score and things like that. And so when it comes back to it again, people are less, is that the game that we played where we weren't sure about the rules? Do we not have something else that we're sure we can play, that we know how we're going to play, kind of thing?
Right. Yep. And it's a bit different than like playing a really big, complicated game, like, Tricarion or something like that, where at the end you're like, oh, hey, yeah, we weren't allowed to do this. that 3 hours of game is null.
But even I find in the really big games, they seem to have their mechanics they really seem to have their mechanics down, and it's usually not. Usually the base rules are all set, so they're usually pretty easy to learn, and it's usually the big, it's the smaller games I've always kind of went, you what? What's that? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I had more pressure on that than... So my actual day job is technical writing, so like writing rule books,
Wow.
but for like software engineers. So I wrote the rule book for this and the new game, and the I think I probably went over it too much because I was like, this has to be perfect, because if it's not, I have no excuse. And was trying to see how other games would describe stuff and be consistent. And I was like, well, I need the in order phases, but also the reference in the back, because that's what I want in a game. And some people really liked it. Some people hated it.
Yeah.
And I think, the people, post board game geek comments on it every now and then. And one of them was like, this is the worst rulebook I've ever read in my life. And I was like, that hurts, sir. That hurts. But
please don't say that. Please don't say that again. Say anything you want, kind of, say nasty things about my pets, slag off my cooking, even tell me you don't like the shirt I'm wearing, but please spare the rule book. That's cutting. That's kind of cutting kind of deep. But it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, and I suppose the other thing is, as well, is the last thing you wanted to do is to be tagged in LinkedIn by somebody to say, oh, you want to take this person on as a technical writer, you should see this pile of garbage that he claims a rule book kind of thing. It's like, damn it.
It's strange because like you think you're just explaining how to play your game, but then you take for granted how many terms and concepts someone may never have heard of before. And the something as simple as I think like in the game, you deal out, it's like deal 9 face down cards to each player, and then deal each a hand of 2 items. You're ready to begin, and I'm watching these people like playtesting the game, like just reading through the rule book, and they're reading that, they finish that sentence, you are now ready to begin. They look at their hands. Hey, I've got a boomerang. Does anybody want a boomerang? And they just start trading cards. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, we're just trading cards. You can't do that. And they're like, well, it doesn't say we can't. It's like, technically true, but normally in games you can, unless it tells you can do something, you can't.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh well, all right, whatever. And then, but it's stuff like that.
I've seen
that never would have occurred to me.
Yeah, but I've also seen that in terms of like, say, blind playtesting, and you can tell the people that have been they've been playtesting, but they've always been available. And then you've got the next level of blind playtesting, because it's leaps and bounds between how a rulebook can be written. Because I get a lot of kicks. I get sent quite a few kind of Kickstarters here, there, and everywhere. And some of them you can instantly tell that somebody has been doing a lot of blind play testing, because it basically is almost a case of, it explains absolutely everything. And that's right, it should do. Somebody should be able to basically be handed a box and the instructions and be able to play without having to do anything. And other people, you read the rules and it's almost like you're expecting the designer to be standing over your shoulder and kind of picking in and saying, all right, you should be doing that. So it's a bloody difficult thing to do, because you, at that point, you've probably been eating, sleeping and breathing the same thing for the last 6 to 8 months at least. So to you, it's really, really blindingly obvious, while to somebody else, they're just like, this doesn't make any kind of sense. But I mean, it obviously made enough sense, because Arcane Alley kind of went ahead and it kind of funded. With regards to the project you've got coming out next, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is an expansion to Arcane Alley. You do need the base game. You need like the board and the the tokens and the item deck that comes in it. So this kind of, it's like the theme is like a werewolf merchant comes to town, and there's like this magical emerald moon, and so all the new items are like these moon items, and there's a moon phase that kind of changes every turn, and depending on which phase it's on, certain items will do special things. But it kind of, I think, adds a little level of depth to Arcane Alley that wasn't really there, because originally I wanted to release the game with this stuff, and it was just too overwhelming for like the casual playtesters, and I wanted to hit a game that could, one, play up to 6 people, and that I could enjoy, and my friends that play a lot of the kind of like complicated games could enjoy, but also if someone was just new, they wouldn't feel overwhelmed. And the expansion stuff was just a little too much. But it adds a market, so it changes the way you can draw cards. You can now buy them, and it mixes with the other item deck. You use like half and half of each.
Okay.
And like the original game is about making sets of magical items. You make 3 of a kind, and now the half and half deck, they'll be like, everything new is like creepy. It's like a new creepy, foresty, haunted kind of thing, and have it scheduled so that it'll be sent to backers to arrive in October before Halloween. So,
all right, cool.
But let's say you have I think the base game, there's a Sovereign Sword. It's kind of like Sword in the Stone or something.
Yeah,
and the new game has a Skeletal Sword, so it's like a sword made out of like skeleton parts. They both kind of look similar, like the art style and stuff like that, but you can sell a set of any sword, so 2 of one, 1 of the other, and stuff like that. But they all have new effects. And I would say the base game, Arcane Alley, like your strategy really is keep your... you want as much gold as possible. You want as little infamy as possible. You get too much infamy, you gotta pay fines. And spend your gold. But I would say the basic strategy is keep your infamy as low as possible, and then try to make gold. But play it safe more often than not. And the new game is really, you have so many more options on your turn. It's not about like whether or not you can sell a set. It's which one do you want to sell, which one would be better to sell now, which one could you save for later, and which effects should you time at certain turns to really maximize your turn. So if you like that kind of like crunchy like stuff, this lets you do it. But someone who's familiar with the base game can still just be like, I like eggs, I'm gonna make eggs, and they can just still do that and be okay. So these really give you little advantages, but yeah, I think it's really fun. If nothing else, the market part can be used in the base game just to give people more draws.
Are you? If people come in to pledge for the expansion, are you also selling the original, or allowing people to back for the original as well? Yeah.
Yep. There's I have a few different like pledges, but you'll get the original for a discounted price, and you can get the deluxe tokens that were on the original Kickstarter that were exclusive to that, but they're not going to be cheaper than the original Kickstarter. So people who backed it the first time should still feel like they got the best deal, because they were there, they were the first supporters, and and the newcomers, they do get a deal, but it's not quite as good as that, but it should still be a reason to back. And these lined up perfectly, so I'm going to brag about the pledge names, because I love a nerdy theme. So if you just want the expansion, it's the New Moon.
Okay.
If you want both the expansion and the base game, it's the Full Moon. If you want everything, including the deluxe pieces, it's the Super Moon. And if you're a retailer, it's the Sailor Moon.
I've no words. You've sat and thought about this, obviously. We're with as a question, as you mentioned, deluxe components. Do you think there's a pressure, or did you feel a little bit of a pressure to produce kind of like two versions of the game? Kind of like, because I see a lot nowadays, even in kind of like, whether people are kind of like the first or the second or the third campaign, there seems to be a little bit of pressure for people to have, here's the base game, and then here's the deluxe super duper edition.
Yeah, there is. So I don't know if this is explicitly said by a lot of people in the community. Like, in fact, most of the people on like the groups that I'm in, the Facebook groups and like on Board Game Geek and stuff, they say they don't like exclusives. Like, almost across the board, the people that comment are like, I don't like this. I just want everything in the game, and I just want to buy the game as is. I don't like stretch goals that give you exclusives later on, and like as a stretch goal that should just be in the game. But statistically, that's not true. Like, the deluxe thing I added on the day before the campaign went live. And one of my good friends who has run a couple campaigns, he was like, make one with these, just do it, and set the price to be this. Yeah. And people will get it because it's the only time they can get it, and other people won't have it. Like, if anyone gets it in a store later, they won't have this version. Yeah. I was like, all right, man, I guess I'll do it, but it seems, I don't think it's going to be worth it. 80% of my pledges were the deluxe version. Like, it's insane. Like, if I hadn't done that, I honestly don't think I would have even funded. Because it was $10 more than the base version. And I did fund, but not by a lot. And I don't think it would have even funded. Had I not done the deluxe version, because people do want that, and they do want the exclusives.
Yeah, but I mean, in all fairness, your price point isn't horrifically high. In fact, I would put you in kind of like the lower tier in terms of price point. I mean, I've seen terms and differences in deluxe between like, the standard game $79 and the deluxe version is like $109, and you're just like, okay, kind of thing. Whereas $29, because that's what it was, $29 that the original was for. That's, to me, that's pretty decent. That's a really decent price, especially for like a deluxe thing. It would have been the case. That would have been, that was a kind of a good thing. You've thought up these fabulous pledge names, but do you have fabulous pledge figures? I mean, how much is it going to be to get your ticket into the alley again of the moon?
Yeah, so to get just the expansion, it'll be $19, okay. Plus shipping. Mm-hmm. To get both of them together, it'll be $39. Yeah, and to get both of them together plus all the deluxe pieces, it'll be $48. So still, I think on the lower end when you get, considering you're getting the expansion and the game, and there are a few exclusives this time. There's going to be a special item that only the backers can get. There's going to be a special wizard that only backers can get, and there's going to be like an enamel, like werewolf head pen that every backer gets.
Is there going to be Kickstarter fan fiction, like we spoke about earlier? Are you thinking about doing that as a stretch goal?
No, probably not.
Probably not.
It's like the world's like a little too like tongue-in-cheek hokey. Yeah. I've been posting like the old arts, and like the Jeanette Ramos is the artist, wonderful artist for this. I've been posting like the like before and after, and kind of the story of how we got there, and I'll be posting like those little design diaries on like Board Game Geek during the Kickstarter campaign.
Well, that'd be good.
Just so people can check them out. But The only story will be failure of previously designed items and mechanics. the epic tale of
the epic tale of Corwin Riddle.
The item that never was. Yeah.
The epic tale of Corwin Riddle, who entered the bar and produced his fiddle, and then he said, I can't finish it off. Because I can't think of rhymes that don't end up with you doing a piddle. So there you go. In terms of the campaign, when's it kicking off, and how long is it going to run for?
It starts next Tuesday, which will be January 28th, and it's going to run for just over 2 weeks. I think it ends the following Wednesday.
All right, okay.
Last time I did 3 weeks, and it was just like there were just like 4 days in the middle that just felt like, because it starts off high and then it kind of goes down and then it like plateaus and then it ramps up again in the end, and it just felt like there was like this one middle of the week, like a Monday through Friday, where it was just like, oh, is this still going on? It's just like it was still getting some pledges, but not really. I think one day I actually had negative pledges, and I was like, this
ouch,
which is slightly too long. And I think 2 weeks is a good time to be notified, and it's enough time to, like get everyone, like it's enough time to engage people. I think for 2 weeks.
No, cool. That's cool.
Without dragging on.
Good. No, I mean, we'll make sure we put the link in the show notes, so people can go and check it out. If they want to keep an eye on you, on what you're up to and what you're doing on the internet webs, where do you exist on the internet webs, Mr. Riddle?
I do have a website. It's strangespacegames.com. But the Facebook group, Strange Space Games, is probably where they will get the most content, because I post stuff from Instagram. I post like a lot of like photos and stuff of like the games and playtesting. Cool. And I'll actually be posting like some horribly produced like videos of just me and my friends playing the expansion, just as kind of like a, I guess not live stream, late stream, I don't know, later stream, but just something so people can, if they're interested, they can get an idea.
That sounds cool. Now I'll make sure, as I say, we'll take all the links off you, and we will put them in the show notes so people can click away to their heart's content and come and track you down, like the person that you deserve to be tracked down for. I don't know where I was going with that. It was going to be, I stalled halfway through and then I backed out, so there you go. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us on various places, old places, new places, anywhere at all. We're sporadic, horrific, spreading, and potentially must be stopped. But there you go. If you like what you've listened to, tell somebody else, because that's how we get in more people's ear holes. If you like us even more, then consider going to Apple Podcasts and consider dropping us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1, because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. And I'm just so average. I'm like Joe out of You. Psychotic. But the person who's not been average is the rather wonderful, rather fantastic Mr. Corwin Riddle. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
No, it was very, very good fun indeed. There's only 2 more things to do. I'm dreading the first question, because the first question is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Corwin?
We are merchants first and foremost.
That wasn't a no. That wasn't a no. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Corwin. Say goodbye, Corwin.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful, and check out Arcane Alley. Check out the expansion as well, which you can follow in the show notes if you just click away. And until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.